Welcome into this edition of Dolphins Today. I am your host, Jake Rietma, and like always, we've got a lot to cover surrounding the Miami Dolphins at 9-3 in a great spot, but like any team this far into the season, dealing with a number of important injuries. And we've been telling you all week, there's, I'll say, good news, bad news when you look at the Jerome Baker situation, which is where we'll start. It was confirmed that he will not need surgery and will not be placed on IR. So that is good news. I like that news long term and for the remainder of the season. However, Mike McDaniel did refer to his status as week to week. So that means he's likely to miss some time. And also part of the injury news that has a long-term impact on this Dolphins team is the loss of Jaelan Phillips. And we won't talk too much about it. We've already covered it. He blew out his Achilles against the New York Jets, but obviously that leaves a gaping hole that Andrew Van Ginkel has done a tremendous job of filling. So that is why the Dolphins will need to rely on a number of different pieces to fill in those injury holes. So, like any good team, the Dolphins have been entertaining some potential free agent signings. They worked out a number of players earlier this week, including some relatively big names. But we will start with who the Dolphins were able to work out this week on the defensive line. 3 defensive linemen, and then the Reuben Foster rumors that have been circulating around the team in Miami. So starting with the 3 defensive linemen earlier this week, Trevon Coley, Carlos Davis, and Justin Ellis are all, I would refer to them as NFL journeymen that potentially could make an impact if they were afforded the opportunity, and that remains to be seen if the Dolphins will in fact go ahead and sign any of these guys. But let's get to know them a little bit, because NFL journeymen probably not jumping off the page at you, and beginning with the first option, Trevon Coley, 29 years old, out of Florida Atlantic, went undrafted in 2016. But look at the number of teams he's played for. 7 seasons in the NFL: Baltimore, Cleveland, Indianapolis, Arizona, the Jets, the Titans, the Bears, and Washington. And through that time, he's appeared in 44 games with 100 tackles. So, again, it's not like it's just some guy that put on the uniform and took up space. He has made some impactful plays and is option number 1 in terms of bringing in a potential depth signing for the defensive line. Option number 2 for the Dolphins that they entertained this week in workouts for the free agent defensive lineman, Carlos Davis, 27 years old. He was drafted back in 2020, 7th-round pick out of Nebraska, and played 3 years with the Steelers, was signed with the Falcons this past offseason, but then was cut, and so he's been staying fresh in the USFL. We talked a little bit about the USFL earlier this week, and I wouldn't go ahead and say it's like a farm system for the NFL. Obviously, that's the goal, but nonetheless, it's not like Carlos Davis hasn't been playing football in the last calendar year. So he's a guy that was, in fact, drafted, so store that in your memory book as we move on to the third option that the Dolphins worked out this week, a 32-year-old defensive lineman, Justin Ellis, also a free agent. He was a 4th-round selection out of Louisiana Tech, the Bulldogs, that was picked by the Raiders. And he played 6 seasons with the Raiders before joining the Ravens for 3 seasons, and then again with the Giants in 2022. And a little bit more of a resume in comparison to the first couple of guys, 717 games played, and the 5 quarterback hits in 117 games. You probably want to see a little bit more than that if we're being honest, but hey, registered a sack and a half. And again, these would all be guys that could come in and probably be practice squad guys, but maybe add a little bit of depth to the defensive line if needed. So, knowing what you know now that we've given you the 411, the kind of the Spark Notes version on these 3 potential signings, you got to let me know who you would like to see the Dolphins pick. Let me know in the comments. It's real simple. You type TC if you want Trevon Coley, and CD, like an old compact disc, if you want Carlos Davis, the CD, or Justin Ellis for the potential signing type JE. those are the three players that the Dolphins worked out at the defensive line position, and here's how they would stack up with the current depth chart, because we know Zach Sealer has been playing tremendous, as has Christian Wilkins. Those guys deserve a lot of credit. Deshaun Hand made some impactful plays against the Commanders. Raekwon Davis, I'd like to see a little bit more out of him if I'm being completely honest, and Emmanuel Ogbah has proven he can rush the passer and kind of a little bit different body type than Andrew Van Ginkel, but sometimes those two can be interchanged at the edge rushing position. But that being said, those are the three defensive linemen that the Dolphins worked out: Trevon, Coley, Carlos Davis, Justin Ellis. And it'll be interesting to see if the Dolphins do, in fact, extend an offer to any of these three individuals. I would probably say even if they do, they're likely just practice squad guys, no disrespect, but wouldn't really see the field unless it's an extreme emergency, which we hope the Dolphins don't get to that point in this playoff push, as well as down the road and even into postseason play. Coming up, we'll talk more about some potential roster moves the Aqua and Orange could be making. But first, I got to give a huge shout out to today's presenting sponsor, Factor. Factor Meals, I'm telling you guys, and I've been telling you about Factor Meals. They are tremendous. And I don't want to just give you a full report of what I had, but I will tell you the Chipotle pork chop, delicious. The beef casserole, also really good. And the 1-in-1A, I like to call it, the tomato basil chicken. Lots of good options. And no matter what you choose, you got to remember this holiday season, you're probably looking for something nutritious and some convenience. Am I right? So, thank goodness for Factor. They can keep you energized on jam-packed days. They are America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery, which is super nice, delivery service that can help you fuel up fast for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. So in turn, you'll save some time while also eating well. And you'll stay on track with your healthy lifestyle, all while tackling all of your holiday to-dos. So if you're like me and you want to skip the stress of meal prepping over the holidays, you gotta choose Factor. And speaking of that, you can choose from 35+ weekly flavor-packed, fresh, never frozen meals that support a healthy lifestyle and meet your meal preferences, all delivered right to your door and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. That's the best part. Monday night, I get home late from work. Monday Night Football's about to start. I only need 2 minutes. I heat up my Factor and I'm ready to go. So head to factormeals.com/FinsChat50 and use code FinsChat50 to get 50% off. That's code FinsChat50 at factormeals.com/FinsChat50 to get 50% off. All right. I saw this break earlier in the week, and we've talked about it at length, but it's worth reiterating. Ruben Foster visited with the Dolphins, had a workout for him, and yes, to review, Reuben Foster was the former standout linebacker at Alabama, had some trouble off the field, was still drafted by the 49ers, had some trouble in San Francisco, was then claimed by the Washington, then it was the Redskins, now of course the Commanders, and it didn't work out there, but was trying to resurrect his career in the USFL for the Pittsburgh Maulers. Now, he worked out, and there hasn't been any official report, but that's what social media is for. And Reuben Foster posted this on his Instagram story, or as the kids call it, IG, and said, "Didn't get the job, but I'm grateful for every opportunity I get. Thank you, Miami Dolphins." So again, no official report yet, but based on the Instagram story from Reuben Foster, that's a pretty good source based on a Reuben Foster workout. It is likely that he will not be signed by the Miami Dolphins. And this was a controversial, I guess that's kind of a strong way to put it, but point is he has quite the off-season, or I should say the off-field history, run-ins with the law, but at one time was considered a first-round talent. So there was a lot to consider here, but knowing now what you know, that he's likely not getting signed, I want to know your one-word reaction to the fact that the Dolphins likely are not going through and signing the linebacker Reuben Foster. Let me know in the comments. And again, this was a conversation that had a lot of different angles, a lot of different elements to it, and there was a lot to consider. But at the end of the day, I'm inclined to say that this was probably the right call in not signing Reuben Foster. Obviously, I wasn't at the workout, so I don't know what the physical talents are. And he's a guy that was trying to reinvent himself with the Pittsburgh Maulers. But the fact of the matter is, the off-the-field stuff really does concern me, especially when you consider how great the chemistry is on this current Miami Dolphins team, right? We see it all the time and time again. The Dolphins have a good thing going. First place in the AFC. They're gelling as a team. The defense is getting better and better every week. We know what the offensive prowess is. And so all of that considered, I just don't think it's the time that you really take a flyer and take a risk on a guy that has as long of a rap sheet as Ruben Foster did. So that said, I think it's the right call, especially when you consider the chemistry that this team has right now on the field. And we know how much chemistry this team has because they're featured on Hard Knocks. How about that segue? Hard Knocks in-season edition has profiled the Miami Dolphins throughout the last couple of weeks. Let me tell you, it has been captivating. I've loved every single episode, and most recently, we saw the third episode. So episode 1 was preparing for that game against the Raiders. We saw how they prepared to block Max Crosby and how that Tua McDaniel and Mike McDaniel continue to bond and get better and better. We saw how good Jalen Ramsey is. Second episode was pretty heartbreaking with the Jalen Phillips injury. But this third episode that just dropped yesterday was really entertaining, and I think you can summarize it as the Andrew and Sam Van Ginkel show mixed in with some hilarious sound bites from the Cheetah. So let's review. I enjoyed a lot of it, but I'm going to give you my top moments from episode 3, starting with that hilarious interaction between Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa after that second long bomb that Tyreek Hill caught from Tua. He had to, remember, readjust and turn around to the opposite shoulder. He still made the catch, still scored, and immediately the cameras capture Tyreek Hill saying, Tua, you threw it on the wrong edge. Don't do that again. And again, just if you've seen the episode, you know how funny those two are when they're interacting together. But Tyreek, to his credit, admitted he was wrong and that Tua threw it to the right spot. And this quote was hilarious. I can admit when I'm wrong. Tyreek's thoughts on Tua's throw changed after watching the tape. So in the immediate moment on the sideline, he's like, Tua, don't ever do that again. And then after they watched the tape, he's like, oh yeah, Tua threw it in the right spot. But that's how talented he is. He still was able to make the catch. That was just a hilarious interaction all the way around. Now, I also mentioned that this was the Sam and Andrew Van Ginkel episode. I thought the way they showed him behind the scenes preparing to step into a more involved role was awesome. And it's almost like you can't script these things. A guy that is stepping into a really prominent, important position after an injury comes up with a sack in the first quarter and a pick 6 in the first half, all while his wife is watching from a local bar. Great interactions all the way around. And this was actually interesting. On that pick 6, AVG ran over 20 miles per hour, and this is crazy. That was the 7th fastest ball carrier of anybody in the NFL that day. So not necessarily something from Hard Knocks, just a little interesting stat I wanted to add in. But if you haven't seen the episode yet, the interaction and just the continuity between Andrew Van Ginkel, family man off the field, stepping into a big role, and oh, by the way, I'm going to get a sack and a pick 6. And again, like I said, it's almost like this stuff writes itself. That was awesome. Now, not lastly, don't worry, I got a couple more. But Wes Welker, as the wide receiver coach for the Miami Dolphins, of course, part of Hard Knocks is you see them in the film room. They got the laser point on there, going through the game plan, this, that, and the other. And the way Wes Welker almost had a crystal ball was incredible because part of the tendencies that the Commanders' defense had was to play some single man-to-man coverage. And Wes Welker's quote, talking to Tyreek Hill, if they play that defense, was perfect. He said, be ready to run right past his ass. If we get man coverage, it's stealing. And by now, we all know what happened. It was stealing. First possession of the game, Tyreek runs past the defender. Tua puts it on the money. Boom, just like that, 6-0 Dolphins. and they didn't learn the lesson. Tyreek scores again on single man coverage, and Wes Welker had the crystal ball and saw it coming based on the tendencies of the Commanders' defense, and I just love that quote of saying, if they do that man coverage, it's stealing. That's how good Tyreek Hill is. And all of that insight onto the game planning part of it, what the coaches are saying to the players, I love that. I can't get enough of it. I just want to continue to gobble it up because it is awesome and one of the many reasons I love Hard Knocks. Now, lastly, I think this is a good way to tie a bow on it. The continuity, chemistry, and just overall bond between Tua Tagovailoa and Mike McDaniel is incredible. And we see it all throughout the episode. But there's a couple of different scenes from the episode that really jumped out to me and some hilarious interactions because Mike McDaniel has an awesome sense of humor. And this was kind of recapping it, but on Twitter. And important to note, this is not the real Mike McDaniel Twitter account, so don't take it as that. It's just an account on the Twitter sphere, if you will, but it has the quote that I was looking for. It's when Mike McDaniel is showing Tua his shoes, and Tua goes, "What is that?" pointing at the orange tag on McDaniel's sneakers, and Mike McDaniel says, "It's the brand, man. Are you 75 years old?" And the interaction between the two was just incredible. The way that it's the middle of a game and they're loose and they're bonding and they're laughing, and then they still go out and take care of business. I think it just shows insight into the type of person Tua is, the type of person McDaniel is, and how this whole thing is coming together and really clicking on all cylinders, which as a Dolphins fan, it's fun to watch, and I just enjoy every ounce of Dolphins content I can get my eyes on, and Hard Knocks certainly provides some cutting-edge, can't-miss inside insight to what the Dolphins have going on for them, and those are my big 4 takeaways from Episode 3. Now, it wasn't too many spoilers, so if you haven't seen it yet, you got to definitely take a view, but if you have, let's pull out our red pens and grade the 3rd episode of Hard Knocks. I want a letter grade in the comments. Let me know. A, B, C, D, or if for some reason you thought it was terrible, give it an F. Now, we talk about Hard Knocks on this show. We talk about injury news. We talk about rumors. We talk about just about everything involving the Miami Dolphins, and that is why you subscribe. We also have a lot of fun doing it, like a live show every week, live watch parties, and all the latest around the Aqua and Orange. That's why you subscribe. So if you like what you see, hit that sub button. We've got a Dolphins video for you every single day on Dolphins Today.